Hi guys, my name is Darby and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As you can see, we're back in the kitchen, which means it's time for another episode of The Baking Bean. And today we are going to be making gluten-free lemon bars. Our occasion for baking today is the fact that my birthday is in less than a week, so we are starting the celebrations early by making one of my favorite desserts, and I am a sucker for all things lemon. Now I am making these gluten-free because my mother has a gluten intolerance and I would love to be able to share these lemon bars. Purely so I don't eat them all by myself in one sitting, which, left to my own devices, I absolutely would. To start off, I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of all the ingredients and tools you'll need in case you'd like to bake along with me. For today's recipe, you will need a lemon zester and a juicer if you're going to use my method and use fresh squeezed lemon juice, which you should. It makes everything taste 10 times better, but you can also cheat and use lemon juice out of a bottle. We're also going to be using an 8x8 pan to bake in, parchment paper, and Crisco for lining. You're going to need gluten-free flour of your choosing, or regular flour. You don't have to make these gluten-free. Granulated sugar, butter, of course there's butter in everything I cook and bake. Powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar, 4 eggs, preferably at room temperature, a couple of mixing bowls, and last but not least for this recipe, you will need 4 to 5 large lemons. If you get the option, please always choose Meyer lemons. They're a little bit sweeter and have this beautiful brightness of flavor. Alrighty, so your first step for this recipe is going to be to preheat your oven to 325 and to prepare your pan for baking. You can prepare your pan in a lot of ways. I always use Crisco because my granny uses Crisco, and I do not argue with that woman when it comes to baking. You're gonna go ahead and put a layer of whatever you want, butter or Crisco, in the bottom of your pan. Just spread it around, give it a nice even coating. Once you have a nice, even, thin layer of Crisco on the bottom of your pan, you're gonna cut a couple sheets of parchment paper to line the bottom as well. You're gonna wanna cut 2 decently wide strips of parchment paper, and you're gonna overlap these in the bottom of your pan. It's about that wide. It's not an exact science, but you are going to place them specifically. You do want parchment paper coming up out of the sides. You're essentially making yourself handles so that when the baked good comes out, you can lift it up by these and pull it cleanly out of the pan. Should look something like that. It's got 4 handles. And now you're going to go in and Crisco again. Once you have your pan all greased up, move it to the side and we'll start on our crust. Never say I'm not athletic. For the crust today, we are going to be making it in my favorite way, which is the messy way. We're gonna get a bowl and we're gonna mix it all up by hand. I just feel like it gives you a better control over what you're doing because you don't wanna overmix this. The crust is very simple and it's very reminiscent of like a shortbread cookie if you've ever had that. It's simply flour, powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar, melted butter that you wanna cool first so that you're not putting your hand directly in boiling butter, and the zest of one of your lemons. I'm going to go in with my gluten-free flour first. You're going to need 1 cup of whatever flour you're using. Along with your 1 cup of flour, you're going to want half a cup of confectioner's sugar. And this is where I start making a mess of the kitchen. You're going to need your handy zester. We're going to zest 1 of our lemons into our crust. Now you certainly don't need to add lemon zest to your crust mixture, but I think it adds a little hint of brightness, which is so important in most bakes, but especially in gluten-free bakes where the texture and flavor can sometimes be a little different. Plus, who doesn't want a little extra kick of lemon? Once you have your lemon zest in there, you're gonna go ahead and pour in your butter to the mixture. And this is 9 tablespoons of butter, which is a whole stick, and then 1 extra tablespoon. And then we're gonna do my favorite part, the messy bit, where we get to squish this all together by hand. And this is the part where you ask your assistant to take all of these extra ingredients out of the way that you should have moved before you got messy and bring back over your greased pan. I don't have an assistant, so I'm gonna struggle and do it myself. That's showbiz, baby. Alrighty. Now we're just going to take our crust dough that we just made and press it gently into the bottom of our greased pan. This is gonna be a bit crumbly. That's partly because of the gluten-free flour and partly because you do kind of want a crumbly texture. Once you are satisfied that your crust is evenly dispersed and pressed into the bottom of the pan, we're gonna go ahead and blind bake the crust for 15 minutes. Look at me knowing baking terms. That just means you're going to pre-bake the crust with no filling in it, and that kind of keeps it from getting soggy once you put the next layer on top. While that crust is blind baking, you can go ahead and wash your hands because the messy part is over. For the first step of this filling, you're gonna go ahead and cut and juice your lemons. I like to give my lemons just a little gentle roll first, kind of get the juices flowing. And I'm just gonna cut them directly in half and juice them on this cute little juicer. One of the really fun parts about this recipe is that for days afterwards, your hands are gonna smell like beautiful Meyer lemons. Now, while the juicer will take out most of the pulp and seeds, I am still going to put this through a very fine strainer before we add it into our filling. This is the finest strainer we have in the house, so I will be using this, but if you have access to cheesecloth, that works just as well. I'm just going to go ahead and pour this straight into a measuring cup. We're aiming for about 2/3 a cup of lemon juice. A little under or a little over isn't going to hurt anything. Your end product is going to be 2/3 a cup of this beautifully colored, beautifully pulp-free lemon juice that's going to be the star of our filling. Once you have your lemons juiced, the filling for these lemon bars is super simple. We're gonna go ahead and crack 4 eggs into our mixer. Once you've got your 4 eggs in the mixer, I'm gonna go ahead and add 1 cup of granulated sugar. I'm gonna go ahead and beat those 2 ingredients together until it's a pale yellow and fluffy. If we have our timings right, while these eggs and sugar are beating together, we're gonna go ahead and take our crust out of the oven and make sure that it is thoroughly baked. It's still gonna be pale in color and slightly soft to the touch, and we're gonna move it aside and allow it to cool while we finish the rest of our filling. Once our eggs and sugar are thoroughly beaten together, a pale yellow color and a little frothy on the top, we're gonna go ahead and add our 2/3 of cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. That step does not require as much mixing time because it doesn't take very long for the lemon juice to incorporate with the rest of the ingredients. Add a teaspoon of baking powder. You're gonna go ahead and add some of your gluten-free flour. I say some because this is not an exact science. It depends on the brand of gluten-free flour you're using and how much lemon juice you put in there. If you undercut the lemon juice a little, you'll undercut the flour a little. If you up the lemon juice a little, you'll up the flour a little. I found that it takes anywhere from half a cup to 2/3 a cup of the gluten-free flour. I start with a half a cup and then I just add flour a tablespoon at a time until I get the texture and consistency that I'm looking for. Make sure you're scraping down the sides of your mixer at this step so you don't get any flour pockets within the filling. This mixture is going to look like a very wet mixture. I promise, trust me, it's okay. Once your filling is done, it should look something like this with tons of air bubbles in it. That's what gives it that dreamy, lovely, luscious texture. You're gonna take the filling and just pour it right over your crust, and this is gonna go back in the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. You'll know this is done when you can do the jiggle test, which is where you shake the pan and the middle only jiggles slightly. Please try to avoid looking in the oven early on this one and checking, because until about 7 minutes before it's done, it looks like there's absolutely no way that this filling is going to set. Just trust me, I promise it does. All right, these lemon bars are ready to go in the oven. I'll see you on the other side of this bake. Thanks to some editing magic, 25 minutes has come and gone. The jiggle test has been passed and the lemon bars have come out of the oven. Something I like to do in my baking is if something calls for powdered sugar, I like to do it in 2 layers. I like to do the first layer while it's hot and fresh out of the oven, so the powdered sugar kind of melts into the bake and gives you a nice little sugary crust. And then I like to do a second layer when it's fully cooled, the layer that you will see, the layer that will stay on the top and give it that pretty white powdered sugar look. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on the first layer of powdered sugar now, let it melt in, let the lemon bars cool down. We'll put a second layer of powdered sugar and then I'll see if we can lift it out of here. Okay guys, promise me you will wait a good long time, like at least an hour, before you take this out of the pan and try to transfer it. Give it time to cool down and set up. I, however, am impatient. And I'm not gonna do that. And I firmly believe that sometimes people need an example of what not to do. So I'm going to be the example of what not to do, and I'm gonna move these while they're still hot because I want one. And yeah, that's my only reasoning. I want one. Did it, smashed it. If you did it my way, it's still warm and you can't really touch it. You're gonna get the biggest spatula you've got, so that we can try to peel this paper back. I don't remember which layer of paper went first. You're killing it, Darby. See, maybe the directions lied. Maybe you don't need to wait for it to set up. I mean, would it be prettier if I hadn't rushed it? Sure. But the beauty of this is, I'm gonna just put some extra powdered sugar on it, and you'll never be able to tell the difference. Powdered sugar is like glitter in the craft world. It covers all of the problems. When in doubt, powdered sugar. And there you have it. I hope you can see that, because if I tilt this plate anymore, these lemon bars are going slipping off the side. You'll just have to take my word for it. It does not look professional. It does, however, look delicious, and I'm gonna go dig in. Thank you guys for joining me again in the kitchen for another episode of The Baking Bean. If you like this recipe and would like to see more recipes, whether it be more gluten-free recipes or just more baking or cooking recipes, please let me know. I'd be happy to share all of my recipes with you guys. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!